One of the primary tools that you can use is the BFR Phonics Screener. And I'm going to show you how you're going to use those phonics screeners, both the real word and the nonsense screeners. There's information here about administering it, that we start at the top and work down, that when a child makes more than 5 errors in one group, that you can stop. And you can also stop if the child begins to experience too much stress or anxiety around doing the work. This 5 is loose. If you want to try the next section to see what happens, go for it. This test is, neither one of these tests are normed, so it really is fine for you to continue with the child as long as the child is okay with that. You want to slow down children if they're trying to rush, but otherwise let them move at their pace. You have a scoring form so that you can keep track of what the child is doing and noting self-corrections or places where the child is misreading or miscuing on words. And also notice the speed at which the child is able to read. Maybe it's like, oh, well, they read 8 out of 10 of those, but they read them really slowly with a lot of self-correcting. Well, that is feedback for you and the parents as well. In your training documents, you have a couple of sheets of paper that give you more information about how to use the 2 phonics screeners and the scoring forms. I'm not going to go through those right now and read them to you, but make sure that you look to see what screener should I use, the real word screener or the nonsense screener. Typically, the real word screener is for younger children and the nonsense screener is for older children who are struggling readers who've memorized a lot of words already. And then there's information here about when you can administer the screeners with the children. If you're not in a tutoring environment, then we suggest administering them once every few months. Some teachers use them once a month. There is a great video called No Nonsense on the We Shall Read YouTube channel that talks about how a 4th grade teacher administered the nonsense screener once every month to track progress. So you can use them anytime you want to objectively look at what the child can read or decode. You also have information on how to administer the screeners in a distraction-free environment, if possible, but in classrooms, we do the best we can. That we want to remember that we're going to start with a story before we start doing any screening with the child to put them at ease and relax them, whatever that may be. And then there's directions here for administering each section of the screening. You want to make sure that you mark your screener, and there's a variety of ways to do that. We're going to talk about that, and when to stop your screening. Be sure that you read through this document about how you're going to use the results, but ultimately the results are there not to give you that Johnny got 8 out of 10 and is reading at a 1.2 grade level. The results are there to give you an indication of what skills the child needs to still practice. So that is the goal. And the goal is really for the child to get 100% of the words correct. 8 out of 10 sounds pretty good. 9 out of 10 is better. 10 out of 10 means the child has automaticity. And that is really our goal. Here's some information about how other teachers have used the screeners, the no nonsense video I mentioned, the small group strategies, beyond guided reading. You can use these screeners at any grade level in the classroom to get feedback. You can use them in a tutoring environment. Even parents can use them. And you can use your nonsense word screener to check for spelling as well. And this gives you an indication about how to do that. And Brain Friendly Reading is creating a nonsense spelling assessment as well, or screener as well. So when we're looking at the phonics screener for real words, there's a student page and there's also a teacher scoring form. And you can see off to the side where the teacher will be able to record how many the child got correct out of how many words are on that line. For the child, this page may seem overwhelming to them that you're going to ask them to read all of those words. It's okay to take another piece of paper and cover up what is below and have the child just work with what's revealed. At the very beginning of the screening, you're asking the child to give you the sound, not the letter name, but the sound. And then you're going to mark on your teacher scoring form if they say the sound incorrectly, so that you know how many letters they're confident with and how many letters they still need to practice. The next line is CVC words. The next one has both open syllables and closed syllables. This work follows the scope and sequence of the Brain Friendly Reading Program. It has a one-to-one correspondence pretty much. Then we have vowel consonant E. If you're working with a child where you've only taught them short vowels and you're not ready to evaluate them on vowel consonant E, skip that and go on to the blends lines where you can look at, do they know beginning blends? Do they know ending blends? And then the next row, you can see the skills that are there. The H brothers are there and CK. And then we have multiple skills in a row to see if the child can go back and forth between short vowels and vowel consonant E's. It continues. When do you stop? You stop when the child fatigues. And when you go back to re-administer this screening, if you have a child that got 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 on these sections, you don't need to screen those again. Don't screen those again. But the ones where the child has gotten 4 or 3 or 6 or 2, then these are the sections that in between your screening time, you have worked on these skills and you come back and reassess those sections. If you haven't taught a section yet, so for instance, this is a syllable division section with 2 syllable words. If you haven't taught this to the child yet, you don't need to screen them on it unless you think that they might be able to read it and you want to see if they can apply their skills, even though they haven't been taught it, based on the observations that you've made of their reading otherwise. So it's fine to move ahead and test, even if they ended up getting 4 or 5 or only read the top row. That's okay. So the children's real word screener stays the same. You're going to use the same screener with them, but you're going to mark on your scoring form. And if you're in a classroom or even if you're a tutor, you might like to have the same scoring form and just mark on one form per child. You can do that by using a different colored pen. Maybe you're going to use a green pen when you start, and then a pencil, and then you have many different colored pens. You know how to do this. But the first time through, you mark with your green pen and you put your scoring off to the side. And you can even note where you've stopped that you haven't done anymore, but you'll notice that too, because there won't be any more marking. And then in October, you're going to mark with a pencil, which I haven't done, but you can put your new scoring again off to the side. And then in December, you would come in and you would mark any difficulties in December. And the goal here is that there's less marking on these in December, and you would have done in October and December, been able to continue to mark down here because you would continue to screen the child on a few more sections each time you go through to see if what you've taught is sticking and how well it's sticking. And of course, you would continue that on the back page as well. So this continues onto a second page and you would just continue to move in that direction. Some teachers have only ever used the front because that's the skill level that their children are at. If you teach in upper grades, make sure that you evaluate these upper level skills, that you want to make sure that they also are able to read their bossy R's and vowel teams and their final stable syllables. So all of this work is what brings a child up to a 3rd grade reading level. Your goal is that they can read this entire back page. If you're in a 1st grade classroom, you might never use that page, and that's okay. If you're in a 1st grade classroom, you might never use the nonsense word screener, and that's okay. And right now we have in development a phonics screener for kindergartners and for beginning 1st graders, where you can have the children read their CVC words or their floss words or their blends. And have them read them with real words, but unfamiliar words, so that the children are able to actually decode what is there for you and not just pull from a basket of words that they've memorized. So that is in process and it's coming. If you teach at those grade levels, be on the lookout for that. You also have a phonics screener that has nonsense words on it. This is the student's page, and you'll notice that this one is spaced out quite a bit more. It doesn't exactly follow the one-to-one correspondence with the BFR curriculum that the real word screener does, but it does allow you to be able to assess the child's ability to decode different skills. So in the beginning, you would still start with looking at whether the child knows the correct sounds for their consonants and for their vowels. And in this case, they're separated. Then we're saying, does the child able to read words where the vowel is short in the middle? That's a closed syllable. Can the child read vowel consonant E words? That's another syllable type. Here are closed syllables again, but they have blends on them. How does a child do with those blends? Do they know those blends? If you're working with upper grade children, this is a great place to assess whether children are actually able to decode with all their blends and not just make an assumption that they know them because they're older. Then we're saying, can a child read multisyllable words where all the vowels are short? This is a VCCV syllable division, and we're not testing whether they know how to syllable divide, but does their brain see these words? Can they break these words apart? Can they put the correct vowel sound in there? If they can with multisyllable words like this, that's fantastic. That's a skill for us to be able to assess. Then we're asking, are they able to read with their H brothers? Can they apply their vowel consonant E work here? The second page has ing, ang, ong, and unk, 3-letter blends, more multisyllable division with both vowel consonant E work and closed syllables. And then we have all of this work to say, how are they doing with different vowel teams? And those vowel teams sometimes have 3-letter blends or 2-letter blends. Then we have a section to assess their BOSSIR, more multisyllable work. And at the bottom here is an opportunity to see if they can read a word that's very consistent and just go back and forth between the different vowel sounds. For some children, that will be very straightforward. If it is, it means that they know those vowel sounds very well. And this is a kind of an additional piece to use as an assessment for children being able to do a close reading with words that look really similar and make the correct changes. And what you're really looking for here is, A, if they can do that, how quickly can they do it? How much self-correcting is required? Because we're really looking for children to be able to get to the place where they have automaticity and can go black, block, brick, brink, blink, clink, clack, clonk, crink. That's the goal, speed and accuracy. So even if they read it all correctly, but it's really slow, that means that we're still working on developing automaticity. So then of course you have a teacher scoring form that you can use different colored pens and keep track of the scoring in the same way that we talked about with the real word screener, where you mark the words in October with a blue pen and in November with a pencil and in December with a black pen, so that you are able to see the growth and the progress, and you can just make additional columns off to the side where you track the changes from month to month. Some teachers have used just this first page in upper grades to say, can I get my children, all the children in my class to read 80% of this first page correctly? You have to set those goals for your students about where they are and where they need to be. But keep in mind that being able to read all of this nonsense word screener accurately is the goal for a child by the end of 3rd grade. So this is the nonsense word screener. Make sure that you go back into your documents here where you look at the information about what screener you should use and when to use them, so that you use the appropriate screener, either the real word or the nonsense word screener, and play with these screeners. Also administer them with people that you know who are even adults and see how they do. Practice marking them, listening to what it is they're saying. if we jump back to the real word screener, what we'll see here is that I put next to the individual letters, if they said if they had that little at the end where it didn't belong, that just lets me know that those need to be cleaned up. If they said the wrong sound, I mark that next to it. That gives me an indication of which letters need to really be honed in on, but I don't really pay too much attention to that other than to have this as a place to record their accuracy so that later we can say that we in fact started here, and then after we tap the chart, that all of this became automatic. You'll notice here that what I did was to put above the word what they said. So instead of let, they said lit. Instead of hum, they said him. Here I snuck in a little R. Instead of fog, it was frog. Here I snuck in an L to say that they misread that as slip. So instead of just marking that they read the word wrong, I'm marking what they did that was incorrect so that I can look at it and go, they are not really cueing on those vowel sounds correctly. And they're also looking at a word like fog and thinking about a word that they know, like frog. They read all of these words correctly. That would be atypical, but if they do, that's fine. Here, I wrote what the child said. Instead of hike, the child said hick. This mark is a line with a circle on it that just looks like this. And that's an editing mark. And you put that through the part of the word that the child is missing. So instead of fade, they said fad. I said that over here too. Instead of sight, they said sit. That mark means that they read that word incorrectly. Here I wrote what they did read. They said pack. Here they said loon instead of days. Children will often say does. And I wrote the vowel sounds that they said. Here you'll see that I marked through that R to say instead of grab, the child said gab. So those are the kinds of editing marks that you can use on the screeners, marking what the children said instead of what was written, and perhaps what they eliminated or what they added into the words.